had started to think about two completely different worlds that the boomers grew up in versus where the zoomers have grown up.
It's hard to exist in this world of like 10 trillion choices. It is a tremendously difficult burden.
Zoomers do not think that the advice from the boomers explaining ways in which Zoomers financially could make different decisions is useful.
So I have sympathy for Zoomers having the problem to deal with. I do not have sympathy for the Zoomers who throw up their hands and just say this is the way it is.
Hey, welcome to the Create Unknown, the home of Make Something Mean Something. I am Kevin Lieber. We've been missing in action for a little bit of a while, but now we're back. And with me, as always, is Matthew Tabor.
Yeah, the international tour has concluded for now. You say missing in action. Some of these places were the sort of things that could have been a Chuck Norris missing in action movie. I really missed the boat by not getting up to my neck into something horrible so that, you know, somebody like him had to come and rescue me. But it's really funny because we haven't been doing that, or we haven't done this in a bit. I haven't been at the desk doing it in a bit. And I'm massively over prepared on things to drink. As you were just talking, I looked around, you know, because I like to drink a lot of stuff as we do the podcast. And I guess over the last hour, I've just been bringing like beverages to this desk for recording. So there's a big mug of tea. There's an unopened can of Sunkist Orange Zero Sugar. There's Diet Ginger Ale, there's Coke Zero, and then there's this energy drink that I mixed up. I don't know. I can't drink all of this in an hour, but it's here.
Five drinks. Okay. We don't have a lot of time, but you mentioning Chuck Norris movies makes me think, I need to watch more Chuck Norris movies so I can get my opinion of his films solidified. And then B, we could do a whole podcast potentially arguing about them, because I am of the opinion as of right now, he has never made a single good movie.
Yeah, there are a couple that are okay, but I mean, most of them are really the same movie. They're all the same movie, and I don't think many of them are really good. But I still enjoy watching them, you know. But I'll tell you, the last one I watched was what's the Invasion one? Invasion USA?
Invasion USA, yeah.
It just happened to be recommended on Amazon, and I was up really early.
Which was a cover I was obsessed with as a kid, seeing that in the video store. I was like, this looks awesome. The cover of that movie is sweet.
Yeah, I actually found the film really hard to understand, like to follow along with. The plot is weirdly confusing. But I was up at like 6 a.m. I watched Invasion USA. Then I went to a gun show for like 3 hours, and I had the most like 1980s American day that I may have ever had in my life that day. So for that reason, it made watching Invasion USA excellent.
Okay. All right. Let's get off Chuck Norris. Usually when you're gallivanting on your trips, I like to drop it into a solo podcast, but my shoulder is all messed up. I have had this. I was finally diagnosed with shoulder impingement, which was really bad and extremely painful. And like literally I couldn't sit at the computer for more than like 1 hour. So I'd spend 1 hour kind of doing all the work that I needed to real quickly. And then I would just leave the office basically. So that's why, excuse me, I've also been missing in action, as Chuck Norris would say.
And I missed some time as well, because on the way out of Australia, where, it was actually a massive TCU themed, Create Unknown themed Australian trip where I checked in on Minnie Kudos, who we know and love. And then, John Swan, who did a couple episodes with us and has done great deal of editing over the years, and then finished it out with Willy Whacker from the Discord. But when I came back, I got a horrible sinus infection. I mean, it was just unbearable. That destroyed me for like 2 weeks. So this is why we had a gap, because Kevin was rolling around on the floor, grabbing his shoulder like he'd been shot all day long.
That's right.
And I was just snorting Dayquil and NyQuil for 2 weeks. But now your shoulder is serviceable. It's not 100%, is that?
No, it's not 100%, but I'm not in excruciating pain all day and all night for now. But we are old and broken, and that's what I want to talk about today is boomers versus Zoomers, because we've done a little bit of complaining on this podcast, I think, in both directions. And I think this episode will be largely focused on that, because there's so much going on economically that you see this war raging between the Zoomers and the Boomers on a lot of different levels. It's actually very complicated, and it's hard to sort of summarize or distill into one thing. If I was, hoping to do so, it would largely be that like the Boomers don't understand what life is like for Zoomers. Mm-hmm. And the Zoomers do not think that the advice from the Boomers is useful to them.
I think that's a fair breakdown of the two camps. Yeah.
And you and I have also, more so on your end, have really been excellent, I think, in explaining ways in which Zoomers who are struggling financially could make different decisions, starting like largely with food. I mean, that's kind of like one of your pet projects is your obsessive economic breakdown of like how cheaply it is to eat well, and not just like eat ramen all day, but like you could eat good food for not a lot of money.
Really like eating that's like properly nutritious and not spend a lot. But I like food because literally everybody needs it every single day. It's as universal as it gets. Like food and sleep are the two universal things. Even shelter is not universal. You can, if you have food and sleep, you can get by outside for a very long time, right? But yeah, it's totally accessible, and that's why I kind of obsess over it.
Yeah. So there was something I just had started thinking about in regards to this debate, probably in the last week or so, that I wanted to discuss with you. Because it's something I hadn't seen other people sort of bring into the debate. And that's something that I like to do when I come up with something that I think is a fresh angle on it.
Okay.
And I started thinking, so, the Boomers lived through this generation of great prosperity, right?
Yeah.
Economic prosperity. And now, lots of them are sitting on these big nest eggs. And gosh, there's a whole other debate about the fact that many of them don't want to give any of that money in inheritance to their kids, and they're like donating it instead. And that's its own other thing.
Yeah.
Like I said, there's a lot around this topic. But what I had started to think about were the two completely different worlds that the Boomers grew up in versus where the Zoomers have grown up.
Okay.
And
this is supposed to engender sympathy toward the Zoomers.
This is to engender sympathy toward the Zoomers. This is my case for what the Zoomers I think are 100% right about.
I've never been somebody like allergic to things that like breaks out in hives, but I think it's happening right now. I think what you just said is making me so physically uncomfortable.
Good.
But I'll let you make the case.
Okay. So my case is I started to think about the world in which the Boomers grew up had dramatically less opportunity to spend money.
The Boomers.
Yes, this is my new theory. I could be completely wrong about this. I'm not actually a Boomer, although, some people like to call me that. I'm not a Boomer. I don't actually know what it was like to grow up in the 60s and 70s, but I started thinking about the types of things that Boomers could have been spending their money on in the 60s and 70s. And it doesn't seem like a lot.
It isn't a lot. No.
Okay. One of the first things. So I would love to detail the sort of Boomer life that they grew up in as far as opportunities to spend your money. Mm-hmm. Not only opportunities to spend your money, but also sort of the types of things that that you thought you had to spend money on because of the environment in which you grew up versus the Zoomers. Okay. So when you're a boomer growing up in the 60s and 70s, the list of like entertainment options that you had to spend money on was like books and records and like shows, like going to a live music show, I guess. Going to the movies, sure. And that's kind of it. I mean, I guess you could go like bowling with your friends and like, but that was super cheap. I mean, that cost like nothing.
Yeah.
But just they grew up in a world where there was not a lot to even spend their money on because it didn't exist.
That's accurate. And also you have to think about the distribution. So like, and this is a tremendous factor in, I think, what you were about to say. Okay. The next step of what you're about to say is getting something was hard to do. Okay. Like procuring an item took several steps and a lot of time, and it was a deliberate action. Whereas right now, here's an example. I like, I don't know what you call them. They have different names in different countries, but they're like stretchy, thin, like beach shirts, swim shirts. I know Australia calls them rash shirts. And I'm wearing one right now. Okay. They dry out incredibly fast. That's why they're like popular around water. Because you can get them wet and 10 minutes later they're dry. Well, I love them for work because I can sweat in them and I don't have like, I'm not wearing a cotton sweat soaked sponge all day. I like these a lot. Well, a deal popped, where it was 2 for $10 an hour ago. In 2 presses of my finger, I got them and they will be here tomorrow. Now, if this had been an item of clothing that my mom or dad wanted, this would have been 50s, 60s. If we're talking like youngish, have a little time and money to spend on some frivolous things. They would have had to go into town and order them from a store because the likelihood of them having it in stock is 0. Or they would have had to drive to Utica, which is 45, 50 minutes away. They only went to Utica a few times a year. But you do this in a car that had, gas mileage that wasn't amazing. So it's an expense to do this. As that happened, the car was out of commission for anybody else who'd use it. So you'd have to time this trip at a friendly time that made sense to go clothes shopping in Utica or whatever the hell. So no matter how you played this, or you did it through mail order, right? You would do like mail order shopping was a big deal, right? The Sears catalog was a thing for a reason, right? When you pick up an old comic book, there's all these ads for mailing away money and whatever, to get stupid little things. Well, people bought stuff by mail by sending actual cash even through the mail all the time, right? And then you would wait however long for that order to be processed and then have it shipped back, which was not as fast as it is now. So anyway, the logistics of getting things, even if they were available, the distribution and the logistics and everything stunk compared to now. So that made it that much more difficult. So in this limited list, you're 100% right that the amount of stuff was much smaller, through like just generally culturally, less stuff, but also think how much harder it was on international trade and things being made in other countries and all the logistics and distribution applied to that situation. So this is a huge, huge issue that you've uncovered that when you think about it for a couple minutes, you're like, oh yeah, there really wasn't a lot to spend money on.
No. And that's just, like entertainment or clothes and even like the variety of clothes, like in our lifetime, I remember like the idea that you could get a t-shirt with like Super Mario on it was crazy. Like, oh my gosh. Like when Michael first started doing loot on Vsauce, that, 2011 or something like that, it was novel to be able to be like, here are coffee mugs that have all the different Mario Brothers characters on them. Like, oh my gosh, isn't that so crazy? Like, it wasn't that long ago that was new. And now you could get like any sort of object that you want, essentially, with any obscure character or video game or anime or music or John Wayne, or you could get anything on anything now with the click of a button from your bathroom toilet.
Yeah. Sticker Mule, which I personally love Sticker Mule. I think Anthony, who runs it, is a wonderful man. It's a good upstate New York business, so I support it. But they send these offers a couple times a week where it's a deal that's like, oh, this, yesterday I think it was coasters. It's like, get 50 coasters for $18, something like that. Well, they have been sending them in recent months, where you just get one t-shirt or one hoodie that is just any design you want. And maybe a couple of weeks ago, they had a hoodie for $19, and you just put whatever you want, a picture from your phone, a design that you've made, whatever. And they make these and ship them so fast. Part of why it's fast for me is because the factory's like an hour away. So it always arrives in like 2 days. But you're talking about how easy it is to get, Mario pajamas. I could have, like, in 5 minutes, I could make a hoodie that said, Kevin bad touched me and smells like walnuts. And Monday it would be in my hand for $19. That's insanity.
That's insanity. So I have other like really, really important big differences. Okay. Another one is your favorite topic, which is food.
Yeah.
So they grew up eating the way that you are trying to educate people on how to eat today. They just did that by default. That was how you ate. My parents talk about eating the same damn things every single night of the week, essentially. It was like Salisbury steak and like liver and onions, and meatloaf. It was like the cheapest meat with the blandest ingredients mixed in, and the whole thing cost pennies. And that's what they grew up on. And not only that, but my mom and my aunt, I might have mentioned this on the podcast. We're talking about sometime earlier this year, how going out to eat was a once a year activity.
It was an occasion.
Once a year, their parents would, load up all the kids in the car and then go to some crappy restaurant that my grandpa liked and that the kids hated. That was also probably super freaking cheap. One time a year. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. The simpler places, people went to pretty frequently with like cheap standard food. There's a diner in Cooperstown that's, kind of famous for being tiny and old, right? This is an institution, I forget which website USA Today type list of like coolest little diners in America that I, saw a couple months ago. But Cooperstown Diner is small and it's been there forever, and my great uncle, went there every single morning for breakfast. Like every morning of his life, he went there to eat breakfast. And on the days that he was working, he just went to work on Main Street after eating there. And so like that kind of thing was common, but there's a reason why diners don't exist the way they used to, and even the chains that mimic diners like a Denny's, this is not the height of cuisine in 2025. It's good. Spencer put a link in the chat. Yeah, it's a really unique place. And I will tell you this, I have only eaten at the Cooperstown Diner once in my life. I ate there once about 15 years ago, and that was the only time I've ever been in. But those places made the same sort of food that you would make at home. Old diners in this area were famous for having those dishes like liver and onions. I remember when there was a place called the Neptune Diner that was a really cool looking, you remember this, and probably Spencer does as well. Yeah, it looked amazing, aesthetics, whatever. And when that shut down, a whole lot of the old people were really annoyed because it was like the last place that still served liver and onions. But yeah, I mean, it's those logistics kind of things where like even getting meat in, different cuts and quantities and this and that was harder in the past. And so you had simpler offerings with, what you were purchasing at a butcher or a grocery store. And that meant simpler dishes too, and it meant repeating a lot of the same meals. What I really advocate for is that I think that you can take the essence of that and then do it in a modern way extremely cheaply. So I'm not eating like boring stuff, even if it's the same type of dish. Like yesterday, I made eggs with a bit of chicken, and I slapped some Flavortown honey mustard with sriracha on it. And put some Madras. So it was like Indian mixed with Guy Fieri mixed with cheap 1950s. This is like you can have international cuisine that tastes amazing and costs pennies. You can do that now. You couldn't really do that before. But it's hard to exist in this world of like 10 trillion choices. It is extremely, extremely difficult to process that and make good decisions, whether it's food, clothes, entertainment, literally anything.
Yes, this will end up being sort of the end of my rant, is what you said, and I could sort of elucidate more on that. But let me give more examples here to bolster my theory. Yeah. Rounding out the food thing is that you also have to understand that going into a grocery store, you're not walking around these aisles where you have the option to have Cinnamon Toast Crunch flavored everything, right? Yeah. There are not 14 different types of Doritos, and you had to try the new one that's, chili con carne flavor. You haven't had that one yet, and you're going to make a TikTok about it. Like, that was not a thing. They did not have like 97 cereals and 4,000 flavors of potato chips. And now just extrapolate that to everything in the supermarket. All of the options were diminished dramatically. It just didn't exist. It wasn't there to buy.
It wasn't a thing. Yeah.
It wasn't a thing. Okay. So that's food. I have two other really big things. One is, air travel. It was not a thing for everyday Joes to buy a plane ticket and go somewhere on vacation or to visit a relative or any of that. Like, flying was really expensive. First of all, it was much, much, much more expensive back then. Now it's like bizarrely cheap to fly someplace. It's bizarrely cheap.
It's cheaper than driving.
It is.
In almost all cases, it's cheaper than driving domestically. Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't even make sense how cheap that is now. So because of that, people consider flying to be no big deal. Oh, of course, I'm going to fly across the country to go to my high school friend's wedding. Like, of course I'm going to do that. Back then, it's like, that will never, ever happen. That's not a thing that anyone would even consider. It's just off the table. You wouldn't even get invited.
Card.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Send them a Hallmark card. Congratulations. And that's the end of it.
Yep.
So like, that part of the world is completely different. There's no expectation, or there was no expectation that you would, hop on an airplane to do anything superfluous back then. It just wasn't in the cards. The other thing is college. Like, going to college started to really become a expected part of growing up with our generation. With our generation, it suddenly became a thing that everyone has to go to college. Everyone. Yes. Every single person has to go to college. If you don't, then you will not succeed in life. This is not an option. This is just the path that you have to take. You graduate high school. You try to get into the best college that you can. Forget how much it costs. You just take out all of these loans, and pay them back someday, somehow, some way. But that also was not a thing for the boomer generation. It was a tiny portion of people who went to college for a specific reason, specific circumstances. Maybe they, were wealthy and their parents could afford it and they expected it of them. Or maybe they had a very specific profession that they locked into, a lawyer or a doctor or something. And everybody, supported that person. Oh, they're going to be the doctor and blah, 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 whatever. It was much more rare and specialized to go to college in a way that is completely different than the world we grew up in and the world that the Zoomers grow up in. And that's a huge portion of everyone's debt today that we're just expected to accept.
Yeah. Speaking of that debt, and I do split with virtually everybody I know on this topic. When I was in Australia, I paid off my student loans.
Oh my gosh. Congratulations.
I completed my final payment of student loans, and the absolute best significant investment of my life. There's no question, hands down. But that's also because I did college really well. And now that I've paid for it, now that I've completely and totally paid for it, I can fist pump and back pat myself over having done that. But it was not at all wasteful or inefficient or, all the reasons that it really is a bad decision for a lot of people did not apply to me because I simply I avoided those pitfalls. But this is, it's something that your array of stuff here from, how hard it is to buy, anything fun where it's like everybody's going to the same store and looking at the same yo-yos on the shelf. Which, there's a reason that like Frisbees and yo-yos and stuff like that had the moment they had at the time they had, because there were not 10 trillion options to choose from. It's like, right. Here's a cool toy. Literally every kid in America is staring at the same thing.
The hula hoop.
The hula hoop, exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, the slinky.
It's a plastic ring that you can, circle around yourself indefinitely. That's the best toy ever.
I like the old stuff like that. I have them on my desk. Like I love.
When was the last time you hula hooped?
Oh, I never liked the hula hoops, but do you see this cap gun? Isn't this awesome?
I like your cap gun. Yes.
It's cool as hell. It's tiny. Like you can see, it's like half the size of my hand, right? And like this would have been a good 1950s toy,
Yes. It does not undermine my point that there were a couple of cool things that are still cool in 2025 that they invented in 1955.
Yeah. This is my rebuttal is, Kevin, here's a cool toy from 1955. Argument over. You lose. But we've talked about this. You and I have talked about this in a bunch of different ways, really for at least the last year, in a heavy way. And in a medium to light way, we've talked about it for at least 5 years. And that is the consequences of what is essentially, what's being termed abundance. Okay. It is a tremendously difficult burden. And it doesn't mean you shouldn't have it. But a shocking number of extremely difficult challenges come up when you do. One of those things, you were talking about the Doritos. So I actually, one of my favorite things about going to other countries is grocery shopping. Okay. I know I've talked about that before, but I love, basically foreign junk food because it fascinates me. Absolutely fascinating. And I love to, I love when I can't read the package. Okay. And, with chips, I really love getting chips. And like the first couple days I'm in a place, I'll go and get like 4 or 5 normal sized bags of chips. Because with chips, it's never going to go really badly. You're not going to like eat a potato chip and like spit it against the wall, right? It may not be great, but you're not going to get something that's like straight disgusting. So it's really low risk in that way. So I do look at like the 14, 15 options of foreign potato chips. And, I do feel like, oh yeah, I got to try this, try this, try this. But that's a really unique special case. The thing that you have to employ now that the boomers never had to employ was simply not doing a thing.
Restraint.
Was saying no, restraint. And that is one thing that abundance forces you to do that is extremely difficult if you're not used to it.
It's difficult for a lot of different reasons. And we'll get to that later because I want to continue giving a few examples before we get to sort of the conclusion of this. Is that it also, as far as like the things that you expect to have was very, very different. So a phone. So a telephone, when they were growing up, there was one phone in the house and obviously their parents paid the bill, right? It's not like every single person, every kid has their own phone. Every teenager has their own phone. That didn't exist. That was not a thing.
Can I interrupt you very quickly about this phone?
Yes.
Because the house that I live in, this was a house that goes back, 4 or 5 generations in my family. So we've been here a long time. It had what was called a party line. And the party line was common in, rural areas because it was extremely expensive to run lines, individual lines, from house to the main thing when the houses are really far spread apart. So this hill only had a couple houses, and they shared a party line. And that meant that they all had the same phone number. They were all connected, just like in one house, there might be multiple phones and you would pick up the phone in a house. And if somebody downstairs was talking on it, you're like, oh, okay. Well, that's how a party line worked too. You could pick up the phone and there might be one of your neighbors might be using the phone line and having a phone conversation. And if somebody, you're in a conversation and you hear the click of a phone being picked up, it might be somebody upstairs and it might be somebody down the road. You don't know who's listening. But the party line, that only got changed. Oh, I want to say it was the mid 90s. Did the party line cease to exist in this house?
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's wild. So this stuff isn't like in the crazy past. Anyway, it just, when we're to take the limitations that something like a party line imposed on your life and your general communication and think that was there when I was in middle school compared to now where, if I'm out of phone service for more than like 2 seconds, my heart rate doubles. I'm connected everywhere and worldwide too. Like I have T-Mobile because they have cheap international calling. I have not been out of service literally anywhere in the world in like 10 years.
Yeah. Even when we were in high school with the internet, one person could use the computer with the internet at a time. And it had to be at a time where no one else needed the telephone because the internet required the telephone line in order to function. So even the limitations in our lifetime as getting the internet when we were in high school, it was dramatically different than everyone in the house having wireless internet directly in their pocket that's lightning fast at all times. This is completely different. And that's only, 25 years, roughly, right? Yeah. To 30 years, something like that. So there's all those things. So let's get slowly into our conclusion. My point is that there's this analogy of a fish not understanding that they're in water, right? Like the fish doesn't know the water that they're in because that's just all they know. And that's how I think of this argument is that like the boomers were in waters that they completely don't understand are night and day, 100% different than the waters that the Zoomers have grown up in. And I guess you would say the the waters of scarcity and versus the waters of abundance. These are not the same, even a little bit. And it seems like the same when you're like, how come you can't afford to buy a house? How come you can't afford to, pay for whatever? Why do you have no money? I had money because these are the same things. I could buy a house and I could do these things. And it's like, okay, in some respects, that is apples to apples, but the environment in which you did these things is apples to oranges 1,000%. Like just the context of the culture, the society, the environment, the world, the waters that you grew up in, even though on a surface level seems the same, could not be more different. Like genuinely could not be more different. And it's literally everything from the access and the expectations of what life is. And that's really what it comes down to. It's like, I expect a life to include the internet and a smartphone. And how do you get food? You use an app called DoorDash, and that's how you get food, because that's the world. Those are the waters that I grew up in, and it just costs what it costs. What are you talking about? So what happens is, and this is I think the end of my conclusion, and then I'll throw it to you, is that, it's back to what you were saying about how difficult it is to restrain yourself, is that we're now at a place where you have these boomers complaining about avocado toast, right? You have these people saying, well, if you just didn't buy avocado toast, you would be able to afford these things. And my perspective is like, it's so much harder for the majority of people to, not only like put guardrails on their spending, but also like purposefully and conscientiously have to make decisions that the boomers never had to make. Like it's so much harder for the Zoomers to live a boomer life than the boomers who just grew up in that life. These are not the same thing.
They're not the same thing. I'm half with you and half not, because I don't think it's nearly as hard. I don't think that the Zoomers try very hard to do things like go to a grocery store and be responsible. I don't think I think too few of them even give it a go. Where like, it's not like they're pushing a cart down the aisle with all the chicken breast and looking at it and saying, what's this for? Oh my God, what do I do with that? Like, no, they know exactly how it works, and they don't do it. You know, they choose other things that they basically want more. They value the convenience, and that's fine to value the convenience. But if you have a limited amount of money, well, this is the consequence, right? Like, you can't have it both ways. You can't have all the money you want, and also all the things you want, right? It just doesn't work that way for most people. And I really don't think they put the effort in. And I don't think it's a Zoomer thing at all. I mean, I'm saying that because we're talking Boomer and Zoomer, but it's really most people at this point. They simply don't want to. And I don't judge them at all for that. If you want to eat frozen pizzas and DoorDash every day, go ahead. But there shouldn't be any complaining about it, because that's not the only option. And pretty much everybody is sharp enough to know it's not the only option. I don't think they engage with the hard topics like restraint and fail. I think they don't engage at all. And that's why I have a lot less sympathy. I've known a bunch of people over the years, because I've talked about food stuff so much with people, and like I never kind of forget what somebody likes to eat when they say something. So is Vibecat's in here. Like 5 years ago, Vibecat said that he liked Pepperidge Farm Milano cookies. I never forgot that. And I created a deal alert on Milano cookies so that I could let them know when they came up for sale. So I stick with it, Demetrius, who was in the server for a long time and now is on, Twitter a bunch, recently engaging about storing meat. He needed a second freezer. Well, there's a great 6.5 cubic foot model that I have myself that's on sale for Black Friday. So there are people who, well, Vibecat, since you're here, I can just jab you straight away. Pepperidge Farm Milano cookies are not a wise choice in life. They're awesome. They're really good. I love them, but it's not the height of frugality, necessity, or nutrition, right? But everybody I know who has basically wanted to eat better and more cheaply has done it successfully. I cannot think of one person who I've talked to who was like, yeah, I rolled down the aisle and just didn't know what to do. So I was totally, dumbfounded by raw meat. No, if they want it, they do it. And if they don't, they don't. So everybody's capable of it. And you go to basically anywhere in Europe, east of the UK for this purposes of this conversation, I'm calling the UK Europe. And people are not tragically overweight at all. They aren't. They're exercising restraint and they're facing exactly the same abundance type pressures that everybody here is. So why are they not eating like idiots? Why are they not spending $1 billion a week on food? They aren't, because they just don't do it, and I don't want to eat like them. I don't want to buy food like them. I'm not a huge fan of literally any European diet, but they're sensible about what they do. So it's not hard. It's not like the people of Italy are uniquely positioned to exercise restraint in the grocery store. They aren't. They just don't shop like idiots to the degree that we tend to here.
Yeah, but their grocery stores are tiny and it's mostly fresh food. It's very different over there as far as what the options are.
But they
don't have these giant Walmart superstores. Yeah, when we went to get pasta, it was that tiny market that was like the size of a bodega.
That's because it had where we were in Rome.
Okay.
That's partially because of where we were in Rome. Australia is a really good example here where, the people in Australia are not, terrible food buyers and massively overweight to the degree that we are. And they do have fantastic grocery stores, IGA and Woolworths. And then some of the huge places, and they just don't. So it's like, for some reason, we're uniquely bad at practicing the restraint. And I think there's a degree of entitlement where it's like, I am entitled to eat what I want and do what I want, period, like end of sentence. That's really unhealthy. That's really bad. That's why I don't have the sympathy for a lot of the Zoomers. They're entitled to, basically have disposable income. Well, you're not. It would be awesome if everybody had lots of it, but not everybody does. And if you're in a position where you have to have roommates, you have to have roommates. If you're in a position to, so that after, rent and bills and food, you have $100 a month to do, whatever you want with it. You become a ta on this podcast and it leaves you with $98 a month. And then, whatever, you buy a video game and that's November. It's okay that that's all you can do. Well, they don't seem to think it's okay. They seem to think that they deserve more and are entitled to more. Well, if you want more, work for more. Change.
But it's because the world, you're surrounded by people who have all of this stuff and you see it around you all the time. That's another thing that was completely different in Boomerland, where you weren't they have the keeping up with the Joneses idea. And that was like your next door neighbor got a new car. So maybe we should get a new car, honey. But now it's like the entire world floods you with all of the new cars that everyone else has. And it does something to your brain where you're like, well, I don't, when we were kids, how often did you get a new Nintendo game? Like once a year, Christmas, you'd get one new game, maybe one for your birthday, one for Christmas. You get 2 games a year. And now it's like everyone wants the 5 new games that come out the major releases every single month, because that's what everybody's talking about. You want to be part of that conversation with the whole world.
Yep.
Right. So just to wrap things up, I do have sympathy. We can split on this, and I think that's fine, because I think there's a tremendous difference between living in a world that just is what it is versus having to put in effort to live in that world. Like those are not the same thing. One is, why aren't you putting in the effort? And the other is, this is just the world that I'm in, and this is how life is. And those are not the same thing. And I think that's what's missing from this argument.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do have sympathy on that, dealing with the problem side. And, I know we're running out of time, but the area of the world that I spend the most time in, that I like the most, is the former Soviet bloc. Okay. And this is a place where people our age in particular, exactly our age, had to deal with essentially an overnight change in what was available to them, where they grew up one way. They grew up in having a lot less opportunity to buy things than the boomers did. Just extremely limited supply of literally everything. And then in the 90s, all of a sudden they're teens. They're, like when we were in high school, that age, whatever, all of a sudden they have access to a much greater market, whatever. And I've talked to people about how hard this exact thing was. And I remember going grocery shopping, and I'm sure I've told this story on the podcast, with a girl who, I wanted to buy cheese, and I like cheese in other countries. So I will go and buy like 7 or 8 types of cheese that I've never had. And I'm going bananas in this cheese section of a normal sized, like decent big grocery store. I'm like, oh, this is great. And she's like, I really miss when I was a kid, I would go to the store with my grandmother and we would buy cheese. And it just said cheese on the brown paper package. It was on the shelf, and you asked the guy for cheese, and he took it off the shelf and handed you the cheese. And it was so simple, and I loved it. That sounds horrible to me, but at the same time, overwhelmed by 10,000 options for cheese, this is hard. And I realized, okay, even when you have this amazing abundance mentality and life is good, it being good does not necessarily make it any easier. And it's very difficult to navigate, and you have to consciously try. So I have sympathy for the Zoomers having the problem to deal with. I do not have sympathy for the Zoomers who throw up their hands and just say this is the way it is. I'm trapped in this system of needing to buy a bag of Doritos. No, you're not. You're simply not. So it's complex. But yeah, I just continually, like, by the day, lose patience with the mentality that people are forced in to this like muck, this quicksand of being victims, in this system.
Yeah. All right. Well, fair enough. I mean, we could have a further discussion about cognitive limitations of people and agentic limitations of people, because all of that is really important.
It's really important here.
It is really important to not assume that everyone is as intelligent and agentic as you are, because that's not the case. So, but we have to go now. Thank you, everybody. We had a nice crowd here of patrons listening to this recording. Thank you so much for showing up after we have been busy the last month or so. We should be back regularly, hopefully, from now on. I know I say that a lot, but we'll get a good stretch of consistency going.
We're working on an upgrade.
We're working on something. Yeah, we're working on something.
We got plans. We got big plans.
Yeah, we do have plans, and maybe you'll see them come to fruition. All right, if you want to become a patron and support the podcast, just go to Patreon and look up The Create Unknown. We are there. Until then, we will see you, Space Cowboys.
Thanks for listening to The Create Unknown. We make this show with the support of our patrons. 100% of that goes directly to keeping episodes going every week. And the recent support has been amazing. Sid Poke, NRM, Venture Addicts, Weezer Good, you all really do make this show happen. Thank you to the Tots and the Dumpster crew, old and new, who save tiny little lives every month. And thank you to our grizzled, battle-hardened child infantry. Clemente de los Santos, Dan the Latch, Demetrius Andrews, Erica, Ferrycoon, Jen Maffasanti, Kevin Menard, Mikhail Steinke, Monahan, Natsu, Penny Piddler, Ryan Steer, Ryan Kinder, Samuel Manser, Sean S., Sean Malone, and Tom Videover. And a tremendous shout-out to our elite baby gang commanders. Atrocious Scuff, Kat, Dojangles, Graham Robertson, James Gallagher, Jeff Davis, Orange Vanilla Coke, Patrick Pister, TCU's personal pilot, Andy, Ryan Carroll, Baseweight Ventos, Yeetus Deletus, Jonas Walter, Nathan Robinson, and of course, Trev's dad. You are the elite. Thank you as well to our indentured servants, producer, editor Ben Webster, Minecraft mogul Laterman, Discord